Hello everyone and welcome back to another Figurehead Reviews video, and today we are taking a look at the Marvel Legends MCU Taskmaster from the Crimson Dynamo Build-A-Figure wave. Here we have Taskmaster displayed in the front window with all of his various accessories, and then down near the bottom we see the Black Widow movie logo along with the name Taskmaster. On the side we do have some artwork there of Taskmaster basically just staring at us with looks like some effects there in the goggles. On the back, we do get some artwork that is actually different from the side artwork of Taskmaster. He has his shield and sword out, and then we get a very brief read-up. Taskmaster is armed with the ability to mimic an enemy's every move. And then we do have all the other figures needed in this wave to complete the Crimson Dynamo Build-A-Figure. At the very bottom, we do have the UPC code, so you can check with your local retailer to see if they have this in stock. But enough about that. Let's get this open and take a look at Taskmaster. And here is Taskmaster outside of his packaging, and unfortunately with the delay of the Black Widow movie, there's not a whole lot that we know about the MCU version of this character. Of course, the MCU tends to take some of the most well-known attributes of the comic version, and they fit that into be the MCU variation. So of course, even just by the bio, we see that he is still going to be a master of multiple fighting styles, which that is to be expected. And we know that he is also the leader of the Red Room, of course, the training facility that trained Black Widow. But other than that, we don't know a whole lot about this particular variation to him. It does look really cool though, I like it a lot. And judging by the timeline of the Black Widow movie, which takes place in between Civil War and Infinity War, it seems pretty fitting that all of his accessories seem to be based on various Avengers. So speaking of his accessories, let's jump into it. First, he's going to come with his shield, which certainly seems like it's going to be inspired by Captain America. It's pretty basic looking, silver, and then we do get the orange for the logo on it, and it is certainly a lot smaller than what we've seen with your traditional Captain America shields, and it does go back to the other style that we've seen with the shields where it has the clamp on one side and then you can fold it to have a handle so that you can either clamp it to a wrist or you can have him hold it in his hand. I've always had bad luck with those clamps though. I don't really like them. They're loose, or I've even had them break on me, so that's a bit of a downer. And then he does come with a sword, which looks pretty good. It's going to have the same silver paint to it, or dark gray, and then it has a orange stripe there along the bladed edge. And I guess considering that this sounds like it's going to be too early for the Ronin phase of Hawkeye's time, this is probably just something that's more of a character trait with him, nothing that he's sort of stealing from the Avengers. And speaking of Hawkeye, he is going to come with a bow and arrow actually this time, which is very cool. The bow looks good, pretty good detail. It does have the orange paint on the ends. It does have some of the same drawbacks that we've seen though with the Hawkeye bow, which is to say that it has that plastic string, so that is a little bit disappointing. However, it does come with a little notch here on the bow so that you can put the arrow inside, which is actually kind of cool that we can actually have a bow with a notched arrow. So that is something that's really cool. The arrow itself isn't anything too spectacular. It's one solid molded color, no paint or anything like that on the tip of the arrow or on the fletching or anything like that. So pretty standard looking. And real quick, one more thing here about the bow. So when looking at it, we can see that this part here looks like it's going to be the handle. I'm guessing this is a sight or something like that. And then, of course, we have that notch. Now, in the trailer, he does fire the bow using his left hand to hold the bow, but you can see if you put it in his left hand, it is going to sharply angle down. You cannot get it really to be upright while inside this gripping hand. That hand has a natural angle downward, so that is a bit frustrating. Now, it's certainly reasonable to think that someone like Taskmaster is ambidextrous and could just use it in any hand, but you can see even in that hand, it's going to have a little bit of a downward angle as well. So for the bow, it seems like some of the best poses are going to be sort of firing off from the side in the way that I had it posed there in one of my 360 shots, and that is a bit frustrating, actually. I'm not a big fan of that. And then he is going to come with a total of 6 hands, the first being a pair of fisted hands. And then he is going to come with 2 sets of gripping hands, one of them that does have a trigger hand, or rather a trigger finger, and then the other one is just a standard gripping hand. And then he does come with a pair of these open gesture clawed hands, which I was looking through different bios, and they did talk about how his gloves have these pop-out claws, and that certainly feels like it might be something from Black Panther. Now, when standing straight up, this figure is coming in at 6 3/8 inches tall, which makes him 16.2 centimeters, so he is a good height for your Avengers lineup. But since we've already looked at all of his various accessories, he has no Build-A-Figure piece to look at, so let's go ahead and jump in here and take a look at the sculpt and paintwork on Taskmaster. And getting up close here, we can see a pretty cool looking design here to the Taskmaster helmet. I really like the character design that they did for the MCU to just not give him a straight up skull, but to give him something that looks like it would exist in the real world. However, the figure seems like it's sort of downplaying the skull aspect of it, with the teeth barely even being noticeable. But yeah, I mean, it still looks cool. It would have been neat if they would have had something printed on the lens there, if they would have had like the little graphs and numbers and things like that we saw in the artwork. But I mean, it's still very cool looking. But like I said, they really downplayed the skull aspect of it on this sculpt. And you do get just a little bit of paint there on what would be the cheeks. And yeah, I mean, I like it. It's not bad looking. It just could definitely be better. Looking at the hood, it is going to be glued onto the head. We get some good texturing, and there's not a whole lot of size to it. It's pretty tight onto that head sculpt, and then it does come down here in these two separate pieces. It does get a bit hindering in the articulation, though, which we will go over. And then, of course, we do have this piece here that's going to go around the front. That is going to be glued on, and we even get some texturing detail on that. Not bad. Looking at the chest armor, here we see all sorts of different line work and sculpted details. Then we get quite a bit of paint, actually. We get the blue metallic paint. We get the orange on the inside there. We get some silver or gray, and quite a bit of it throughout. It looks like it's going to be molded in that dark blue, I'm guessing. That's probably the molded colors there. And then it looks like even on the sides, like we can see the straps where it's holding the armor on. I mean, that is cool looking armor, I will say, and I do like the color scheme. It looks really cool. On the back, we get sort of this backpack looking deal. The downside is we don't get any storage for any of his accessories, but most notably, we don't get any storage for his sword. Like, there's no place to put it. So that is a little bit disappointing. The arms, we can see some more good sculpted detail there, just sort of the fabric looking portions of it there with some patterns on it. Shoulder pad, we get some silver. We see the orange continuing throughout as far as the orange accents. The claw hands are reused from the Killmonger figure, so they're just going to be molded in that solid blue. But from what I saw in the trailer, when he busts out the claws, that works just fine. Fisted hands, we get that same texturing there on the fabric portions that we see up here on the bicep. And then looking at his belt, we can see that we got the buckle painted. We get some blue and silver here on these parts. And then as we wrap around to these little pouches, which don't hinder articulation, thankfully, they are quite flexible. We can see the paint stops. Same thing with the backside. Paint stops, we don't get anything there. And then the pants, I really like this, how we can see, the inside has its own texture, and then the outside is going to have, again, that fabric texturing to it. And then we see more armor plating with the blue, silver, and orange accents. And get a little bit of silver in there. And then the boots look like those are actually relatively plain looking. But a lot of line work and things like that on this guy. I mean, it looks like body armor, which is really cool. I do like that a lot. And I think, like I said, the character design is really well done. Now, looking at the articulation, so the head can move around, but as you can see, it's going to start to pull on those different plastic pieces. He can look down quite a ways without too much issue. Yeah, I guess not quite a ways, but he can look down. But looking up that's it. I mean, his sculpt here is going to hit, and every time I tried to do it, I ended up just popping the head off each time. So I even tried heating the hood up to see if maybe I gave it some flexibility if I could get him to look up, But yeah, that's kind of a bummer. Some of these poses, he would look a lot better if we could get his head back a little bit. You do have shoulders that can go full 90 degree, and I didn't even realize it at first, but he actually has butterfly joints in here. He doesn't really get a whole lot of forward motion out of those butterflies, but he does get a little bit more going back. It's not a whole lot to it, but it's enough to at least add another layer of articulation, which is nice. Full rotation, of course, there at the shoulder. Bicep swivel right there. And then he does have a double jointed elbow, but what I found, and I'll show you here on both hands, that when I try to pull it back, so you can see that the top hinge is still bent, if I just go like this, I end up breaking his dang arm. What it is the sculpt there on the lower portion of the arm allows for a lot more movement on that hinge. So you almost have to kind of support him at the elbow and push the hinge, and then that way you can get it if you want to go straight. But even if you do want to go straight, you can still have some poses where he's going to have a broken arm. And that might actually kind of work in your favor if you wanted to have like maybe Black Widow breaking it. But yeah, that is a very unique part of that sculpt work. I mean, I've never had anyone with reverse elbow articulation, and you do almost have to really kind of like pull on it to get it to go back into the, like pop it back into the socket. And then he is going to have rotation and hinges at the wrists. Now the ab crunch, I was quite surprised how deep the ab crunch is. On the back, it looks a little bit weird. You do have where the sculpt is hidden by this backpack suddenly appear, and you get sort of that bulbous look to it, but it's surprisingly deep. I mean, we are concealing all of that sculpt there. And then going back, we can see it doesn't reveal quite as much. The sculpt work does stop at just painted silver, but it does go back a fair amount. You do have waist rotation, and the belt doesn't get in the way at all. He has legs that can come apart very far. He can kick forward, not too bad. Backwards, meh. He does have an upper thigh cut that is somewhat obscured by that armor piece. He has double jointed knees. There is no boot cut, but he does have a hinge and ankle pivot. And that is going to do it for this review, everyone. So, in short, if you are an MCU collector, I think this is certainly something that you're going to want to add, even if you're not hyped for the Black Widow movie. It's a very visually appealing figure, and I do like the costume design that they went with for the MCU version of Taskmaster. I think it's really cool looking, and I like the color schemes. The blue and the orange, just really, it all pops out. I really do enjoy that. If you are not an MCU collector, though, I mean, you could probably squeeze this in as a comic figure if you wanted to for some sort of just a general bad guy or, mercenary type thing, or even just a variation on a Taskmaster. But if you're a comic collector, I could certainly see you not going with this just because, most comic collectors don't collect the MCU version stuff. So, but with that being said, it is a solid figure. There is some articulation issues, as mentioned, with the head, and I don't like how he holds the bow. So that is going to be the biggest drawbacks on him. But overall, still happy to have it for the MCU collection. But anyway, as I said, that is it for this review. Make sure to hit that thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe for more content just like this. And as always, thanks for watching my videos, and have a great day.